Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and welcome to a video all about a bunch of Japanese pickups from a store chain in Japan called Surugaya Specialty Shop. Before we talk about all this awesome stuff, if you guys could do me a favor, please like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you've never done that before, and check out all my social media stuff in the description. I've got Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, my Spreadshirt, and of course the travel channel where you can see all sorts of adventures to Japan and many other places. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and get started. So, little preamble here. Before we get into the actual pickups, one thing to know, some of the stuff I got in Japan when I was there in July of 2024, I was in the Tokyo Bay area. Some of the stuff I got, I put into an episode of Playload. Beyond that, I went to two store chains primarily. One was called Hard Off, which everybody loves the name of. I did a whole big adventure video there, going to a whole bunch of stores, and then I did a separate video on all the pickups. Then I did a store chain called Surugaya Specialty Shop, and I showed you a whole bunch of the stores and the kind of stuff they've got in there. This is the pickups of that adventure. So now we're going to talk all about them. They're all actually video games, except for the first thing, which is just a book, which was actually pretty cool, and then the last thing, which is definitely a video game thing, but it's so good we're going to keep it off screen for right now. A little teasing. But anyway, go ahead and get started. So yes, as I mentioned, the first thing is actually a book. Now, normally, here's the thing with Surugaya Specialty Shop. It is first and foremost basically a toy store that largely, I'll just be honest, basically specializes in anime content, which I have no interest in whatsoever. However, they do typically have a video game section, and their video game section can actually be pretty good. It can also be super inflated price-wise, depending on where you are and what the content is. Keep that in mind. Not all of these are consistently priced, so you kind of have to shop around, as it were. But the thing with Surugaya is that it's relatively easy to get to if you're in the Tokyo Bay area, because there is a bunch of them. So it's hit or miss. Your mileage may vary, as it were. But yeah, they're cool stores all the same. And they also often do tax-free shopping for tourists, which is a 10% savings. And keep in mind that while I was there, I had the benefit of the yen basically tanking compared to the US dollar. So typically, we're an ideal world for the Japanese. 110 yen is about $1, because that 10 also includes 10% sales tax. So you can think of it more ideally 100 yen to $1. It was about 160 yen to $1 on average while I was there, which if you crunch the numbers is basically like saying everything was 40–50% off. That's a win, at least for me. So in that store chain, whenever I was exploring, I very rarely would go anywhere near the book stuff, because book stuff usually means anime stuff, and that's important, by the way, because a lot of the Surugaya specialty shops don't even sell video games at all. So if you're like, I made my way out to this one store, awesome, and you get there and they don't even have video games, you are risking that. That is a very real possibility. Sometimes they just don't. But, okay. I typically avoid the book sections, as I said, and also I can't read it anyway. But I was just kind of going through, and I saw something in English, and it caught my attention. It was this: the Mega Drive Perfect Catalog, aka the Sega Genesis. This is basically a giant book. This is actually the extended edition, which is, I had this translated. There was two versions of this. I actually found the other version. It was much thinner. What it is inside it, it's like a guide of like every single game ever released for the Mega Drive, aka Sega Genesis, that has information on each one, screenshots, descriptions, history, that kind of thing, from every year that they came out, etc. And then it even has, this updated version actually includes a bunch of the Genesis stuff. It has listings of every Sega Genesis title ever released. It also has a Sega CD, 32X, and then it also shows like the obscure hardware and things like the Laser Active as well in there. So this is a very cool book, even though I largely can't read it. But what I can do is, I do live in 2024. I do have a phone. If there's anything in particular I'm curious about, I can take a photo of Google, just translate it. Google Translate's gotten pretty good. So I had the Dreamcast one and the Saturn version of this, so that was just a natural pickup. Plus, if I'm honest, it was only about 1,000 yen, which is really currently is only like $6. So that was a win. But the rest of this is actually all video games. So we'll start over here on the right side. I got some PlayStation 2 stuff. Now, with the PlayStation 2, I kind of really just pick up the titles that interest me for one reason or another. I have no designs on any sort of global set for that system because it's essentially impossible. There was like 5,000 titles released globally, which is just like, no, I'm good. I'm never going to bother with that. So the first one up, I think the only reason this got my attention is I was looking at like a row of PS2 games, and naturally when a row ends, another, you know, drops down, and then the next one starts. So the game that was at the very beginning of that was this game. So it kind of had the benefit that I just kind of glanced to the right and I got to see part of the back. And I'll be completely honest about what I saw. On the back, what I saw was just a bunch of pictures of women. And I was like, okay, that was interesting. So it got my attention enough. You know, I am a guy. So I pulled the thing out and I was like, I wonder what this is. At first it's like, oh, with the line through its story. What it actually means is love story. That's what it's saying. So I looked at it, I'm like, what is this? So I did a little homework on it. What it is a date sim, but it's different than most date sims. Most date sims are basically like images and text and that kind of thing. This one was not. This one, they actually filmed footage. And I can't really play it just because I can't speak or read Japanese, but the game was only like 600 yen, something like that, which is like, I don't know, $3.50. Like, it's really like nothing. And the cool thing is it's actually 2 discs because it consists of so much video footage. Now, if you're wondering, wait a minute, does this get into like not safe for work territory eventually? I really doubt it. There's nothing on the rating that would indicate that, and nothing I looked up about it. It seems like it's very playful, benign type of stuff. But all the same, I was like, that's a unique version of a date sim. I've never seen anybody else do that. Now, maybe somebody else has, and I'm just not aware of it. Usually they just do visual novels of that whole thing, not usually actually filmed footage of women and stuff. So I thought that was neat. So on the novelty alone, I picked it up. Typing of the Dead, Zombie Panic. Typing of the Dead is a game originally for the Dreamcast, which really was just House of the Dead 2, but they took the gun mechanic out and replaced it with a keyboard. So you would be typing and stuff, and that's how you would be shooting at things. They did a version of that game for the PlayStation 2, an updated version called Zombie Panic. Now, I'd be lying if I said I knew what all the updates were. Just by looking at the back, I can see some additional screenshots and modes and things that did not exist in the original Dreamcast version of the game. So I thought that was cool, but it actually also came in this gigantic box that includes the keyboard. This was the primary thing that attracted me to it, is you get a USB keyboard that is Sega branded. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Funny thing about this, though, is that it gave me some nostalgia berries, even though I have never owned it before, which was in my first trip ever to Japan back in 2017, the first time I ever went into Surugaya, which I didn't even know that that was the name of the store chain at the time, and in hindsight, I've realized that's what it was. I remember seeing this, and I almost picked it up, but it was just so big and bulky, and I was like, I didn't know what else I was going to find on the trip, and it was going to take up a lot of space in my suitcase, so I passed on it. And here we are years later, and I found it again. In both cases, it was 5,000 yen, which is about $30, something like that. So I was like, yeah, that's totally worth it, because you get this really cool keyboard, which, by the way, is super clean. I looked at it. Whoever owned that, I think, used it like once ever, and then just threw it into a Surugaya. But also just cool to have a Japanese exclusive Sega developed game from a Sega IP, like a significant one. Like House of the Dead is a well-known Sega IP, but this game, Japan only. So, very cool. Now, moving on. I picked up a game for the Wii. No, your speakers didn't break there. I actually really did. The Nintendo Wii, a system I have no respect for and completely hate. I actually intentionally, voluntarily put down money to pick up a game for it. Really. That game is Captain Rainbow. This was literally, I think, the only game on the Wii that I had even vague interest in that I don't already possess. And for one novel reason, Captain Rainbow is an exclusive to Japan. In fact, that's a safe bet about pretty much everything here. That this game came out only in Japan and was basically about this new Nintendo mascot called Captain Rainbow. And I guess what he does, I'm not super familiar with the premise. I used to know more about it, but to be honest, it kind of faded into memory. I'll have to look it up, I guess, later if I ever get around to playing it. But basically, this game is about him going to some island that consists of a whole bunch of basically abandoned Nintendo characters that used to appear in games, like Daisy, who does make occasional cameos in certain Mario games. I forget the name of that character, the one that from Super Mario Bros. 2, the pink thing that could like shoot eggs out of its nose or whatever. There's various Nintendo characters that have just kind of been abandoned that are all kind of existing on this island somewhere, and I guess you would do something in regards to them with Captain Rainbow. It's just a kind of a game surrounding that premise, and I was like, that's a novelty premise. So I actually wasn't going to buy this, to the point where people in my Discord, I posted a photo of it when I found it, and I was like, I found Wii garbage, and I was about to put it back. But everybody there's like, you should really get that. Like, it was 2,000 yen, and they're like, that's like $12 for that game. That's a really good deal. And I was like, So fine, I went ahead and I got it. So thanks, Discord. You should join my Discord. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me, and we're all chatting video game stuff and other stuff all the time. So, awesome. Moving on. I picked up a piece of hardware for the GameCube. I got the Orange Spice Game Boy player. I have plenty of Game Boy players for the GameCube. I've got the silver one, the purple one, the black one, and even the Panasonic Q one. I actually didn't really need this. The only reason I got it is because the Orange Spice GameCube was, even though we think of it as like exotic and weird, in fact, embarrassingly so, I did an episode of Rare Variants on it years ago, not realizing like just how common it actually is in Japan. But that said, it was the only one of that ilk that I did not have a Game Boy player for. So I actually found it at a Surugaya specialty shop. I don't know, I want to say it was like 5,000 yen. So it was probably like, you know, about $30, $35, which is a bit much, to be honest, for what it really is, because it doesn't include the disc. That didn't really matter because A, I have the disc, but at the same time, I also have like modded GameCubes that could use it. But really, if I'm totally honest, this was just for the cosmetics of putting it on the orange GameCube and being like, cool, it's completed. That's really all that was. But once it's attached, of course, then it can play Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games, which is, of course, neat. Now, speaking of GameCube, so with the GameCube, my goal is a little bit more specific. I've mentioned this in the past where I don't want a full GameCube global set. What I instead want is every game that came out on the GameCube that did not come out on the original Xbox, which substantially truncates that library. So you get all the American stuff, you get all the European exclusives, and then all the Japanese exclusives. I've got all the European ones, and I've got most of the Japanese ones. I'm only missing 3. Alas, I didn't find any of them. I'm also missing a ton of the American stuff, but that's a different story. However, while I was in Japan, I did find several GameCube demo discs that were cheap, and that's where this goes into. I found a lot of demo discs for various systems that were cheap, and I was just kind of shocked by that. So I was like, demo discs are kind of cool. Nobody really collects them. So for, depending on the system, if I see a demo disc, I'll just grab it. But yeah, in the case of the GameCube, cheap demo discs, I'll go for. Expensive ones, there's a lot of like expensive Pokemon demo discs I saw over there. No thanks, I'm good. But the cheap ones, that's fine. So this is for SD, some Gundam game, Gashapon Wars, some sort. I've got the actual game, but this is just a demo disc for it. I don't know if this was a pack-in with something or what the story with this is, but yeah, that's really all that is. This one I don't really know. I think this was a mail-away thing. It's got a full-length instruction manual, which is why it's sitting in this CD case still. But then inside, it's just got this little sample disc. It's like Winter GameCube 2003 collection, something to that effect. You know, it's just a bunch of samples of different demos. The only one I know for sure is on there is Beautiful Joe, because it says it on the back. But that's it for GameCube. For original Xbox, I actually found a few. These were kind of cool because the thing with the demo discs in Japan is that they're oddly motivated. Like, our demo discs were usually just stuff associated with like magazines back in the 90s and the aughts. You didn't really do standalone demos, and when you did, it was considered kind of weird. It did happen, it was just weird. To the Japanese, they seem to do it a lot more often. Like if you pre-ordered a game, maybe they would give you a demo for that game, or they'd give you like a different demo for a different game for whatever reason. And this was very common in the Saturn era, the Dreamcast era, etc. When Microsoft went over there for the original Xbox, as much guff as people give them, and believe me, we're going to, as much as that happens, with the original Xbox, they really did try. They really did try that mentality. So as a result, there are a lot of Japanese original Xbox demo discs in my experience. I found a bunch of them, and I find like no information on them online. I have checked several Xbox communities. I've even put out feelers to you guys being like, does anybody know anything about this? And I really haven't heard anything about that. So it might be out there and I just haven't seen it yet, but like, I just couldn't find any. So I found 3 collectively at Surugaya's. None of these were sealed. Unlike the hard-off ones, which were all sealed, these I had no compunction or no problems about opening up. No qualms, as it were, because they were already out there. So I could dump these online if they really are not out there. The first one was cool to me as a Sega fan, but probably the least interesting as far as content, which is Crazy Taxi 3 High Roller. So Crazy Taxi 3, of course, was an original Xbox game. It's also it's a Sega Chihiro game, which was actually original Xbox arcade hardware turned into a Sega arcade cabinet. So I assume that this is kind of some combination of the two in a way. But yeah, it's just a demo disc for Crazy Taxi. So if you're a big Crazy Taxi person, this is like one of those, you know, you know, it kind of will bug you a little bit that maybe you don't have that in your collection. But it's crazy cheap. This was like $2. Like, it's the kind of thing where they just really don't care about that. The other two Xbox discs I got, I think were slightly more interesting because they have what they are. These are two that are called Xbox-ism. Winter 2003, which just consists of some demos and videos and stuff like that for some Japanese exclusive games, as well as stuff that we would eventually get. And then the other one is Xbox-ism TGS 2002 Playable. So this one's actually earlier. So this has got like Crimson Sea and Otogi. At least that's all it says on there. But again, these are just Japanese original Xbox demo discs, and I have no idea if they've been dumped online anywhere. Same deal, comically cheap. Nobody cares. So I was like, whatever, I care. I'll pick them up because that's a fun thing to try and get. With the original Xbox, by the way, I do want a full set. I finished all the European stuff, all the Asian stuff, and I say Asian specifically because there's 50 Asian titles. 48 were Japanese, one was South Korean, one was Taiwanese. I got all those. 4 Australian, I got those. It's just the American stuff, as always, that I'm missing. Moving on. I got just one Sega Saturn demo disc. Now, I saw a bunch of those. Keep in mind, the Sega Saturn has this misconception, particularly in North America and Europe, as this like horrendous failure. It's like a punchline a lot of the time. In Japan, it was actually the second most successful console that generation. It only lost the PS1. It soundly defeated the N64. As a result, the Japanese got way more games, and they continued that demo mentality. So I found one that I was like, okay, that's actually cool. I want to get that. This is a demo disc for Panzer Dragoon RPG, also known as Panzer Dragoon Saga. Panzer Dragoon is, of course, a very cool franchise by Sega, mostly associated with the Saturn. But that's just a nice piece to just throw in any sort of Panzer Dragoon collection, especially when you're talking like 500 yen. This is like $3 for this. Like, they just don't care. I'm not saying it has any intrinsic value, but to me as a collector, it's a fun thing to get. It's very, very cheap, and it makes for a really cool display piece. You know what I mean? Am I going to sit down and play this? No, because if I was going to do that, I'd play the actual game. But I just think it's neat. Now, same mentality now for the Dreamcast. Dreamcast actually do have a global set. I've got everything. So the only stuff for me to find anymore on that typically is the weird Japanese demo discs, and we got a few. The first one kind of haunts me because it implies the existence of other ones that I may never find. Apparently in Japan there was their own version of Dreamcast official magazine, which is not shocking. They still do magazines there, and they're still quite popular. So at some point they were publishing a magazine that included demo discs. Good luck to me ever finding said magazine or all the demo discs, but I did find a couple of the discs. This one is issue number 1, which is kind of like what we had the first issue. Well, actually, our first issue was a PC formatted disc. You couldn't even use it on a Dreamcast. This actually works on a Dreamcast. And it's got various demos for various games. Again, makes sense. I found issue number 8, although this one didn't have the nice outer layer case. It was just disc only. So the magazine at least went to 8 issues. I have no idea how many of these were produced. I really couldn't find any information on this. And then they had one from Dreamcast Magazine that was like game specific. This is for Dynamite Deca, also known to us as Dynamite Cop. Die Hard Arcade for the Sega Saturn was known as Dynamite Deca in Japan. Over here, it was like a licensing deal with the Die Hard franchise, Bruce Willis, all that. They lost the license to that, but decided to make a sequel. So in Japan, it was called Dynamite Deca. In North America, it was called Dynamite Cop. If you ever played Dynamite Cop, which is an awesome game, by the way, it is technically a sequel to Die Hard. It's just not licensed. This is a demo disc for just that game. And then we get into, that's associated with the magazine though. Then we get into demo discs that had nothing to do with the magazine as far as I know. They were just kind of distributed by what means. Again, it could be somebody pre-ordered a game and they're like, oh, you get this because you pre-ordered a game. Or it could be somebody walked in and bought a new game. Like, oh, here's a bonus that comes with that. I don't really know. But here's what we got. Keep in mind the artwork on these was just done by Surugaya. These were just typically distributed as disc only in plastic cases. This is a demo disc for Soul Calibur, which is of course a very good game. That one is kind of common. I've actually seen that one a few times, but usually it's expensive. Like I saw some stores trying to charge as much as like 7,000 yen for that, which used to be $70. Now that would be closer to like $45. but that's insane for a demo disc when the actual game doesn't even sell for that much. But whatever. I didn't pay anywhere near that, I assure you. I think some of them just get confused and think it actually is the full game. I don't really know. This is Nadesico the Mission, or Nadesico the Mission. I'm not really sure how you pronounce it. But yeah, that's Japanese exclusive, like, anime game, probably visual novel, sorry. I don't know. But either way, I was like, oh, cheap demo disc, whatever. Guilty Gear X, which is actually a really cool fighting game. So finding a cheap demo of that was neat. Speaking of fighting games, Dead or Alive 2. This is actually a weird one because this is one of the only games that got a demo disc by itself in North America. There is a Dead or Alive 2 demo disc. I don't even own it. It is a hard one to find, but there is a Japanese version as well, and so I picked that up. That was cool. This last one, though, is actually not a demo disc, and I think that this was distributed in some magazine. So what it is it's called Dreamcast Visual Memory Data Issue. So I booted this up and I decided to check out what it actually was. This was behind glass. Like, they knew this was of some significance. It was only like 40 bucks equivalency, but I was like, for something that weird, I should get this. What it is it's a disc that just contains a whole bunch of like VMU save files for games, presumably like completed game files. And the last thing I got for the Dreamcast was kind of an accidental and hilarious pickup in hindsight. This is Remute Generations for the Dreamcast, which came with some balloons. This is not a game. This is actually a music CD released like 2 years ago. Even funnier, in my previous episode of Playload, Stone Age Gamer had sent me a few of these Remute packs for the 3DO, the PC Engine CD, oddly enough, the Commodore 64, and the Atari Jaguar. They didn't have or did not offer the Dreamcast version, which is kind of funny. But for whatever reason, I don't know where this came from. Like, every Surugaya I went to had a copy of this. I don't know how or why. But what it is it's a music CD that is Dreamcast enhanced, which is ironically what the Dreamcast was actually intended for. The Dreamcast has 3 modes of operation. It's got its GD-ROM mode, which is how it plays like the original discs. It has CD-ROM mode, which is intended for music CDs. And then it has a third one called Mill CD, which is intended really for music CDs with Dreamcast-specific code for visual enhancement. That's all it was ever intended for. But that code got exploited, and that's how burn games became a thing. It's a whole different story. This is one of the few discs ever actually made for the intended purpose of Mill CD, but not in the original run. So I was like, I picked it up. The music itself, like, I have no idea if this is good or bad music. I couldn't tell you. I don't know music. But it does exist. And like I said, it came with some little cute balloons. I don't know. I picked it up just because it's Dreamcast. But, moving on. We also got some Nintendo cartridge era stuff. Well, actually portable era stuff, now that I think about it. This one, huge shout out to Orky Borky of Canada in my Discord, because he pushed on me incessantly to find this, and I eventually did. I forget the full name of this, but it's basically a Donkey Kong Country game for the Game Boy. Game Boy Color specifically. There is multiple Donkey Kong games on Game Boy and Game Boy Color. This one was exclusive to Japan. It's so weird. This one is a Game Boy Color iteration of a Game Boy game that we got, where they obviously put in extra code and extra work to just update it for the Game Boy Color. So this would be the more definitive edition of it. Found it in the box. It wasn't expensive. I mean, it was like 1,000 yen. It was like $6 for this. So yeah, that was a cool pickup to get for sure. The next one, I actually picked up something for the Virtual Boy, and it was just kind of shocking. This is Mario Clash in the box, and it looks really good, doesn't it? Like, it's in really good shape. There's a reason for that. And those who are astute know I already had a loose card of Mario Clash. I decided to upgrade, which is not a thing I usually do. In this case, I did. While I've been gone from Japan, I don't know where it came from. I don't know exactly how it happened, but somebody found a like pallet of new old stock Virtual Boy games in Japan somewhere. And they dumped them into Surugaya specialty shops. I was seeing like 50 copies of V-Tetris and Vertical Strike and like a few, just like the golf game, mostly the commons, the baseball game, sadly. The only one that was kind of interesting as far as like a game that had been kind of valuable that got included in this was Mario Clash. It was also the one they had the fewest copies of, because naturally people were like, well, if I'm going to buy one, it's going to be that. And I was on that list. So I was like, yeah, I have all the others in box already, but this one I didn't. So I think this was only like 2,000 yen. Like, we're not talking about a lot here, because they realized once they found this giant palette of new old stock Virtual Boy games, it really just tanked the value of all the ones they already had. So again, this is like $12. I was like, all right, yeah, sweet. I'm totally doing that. So very cool to get that. Moving on. We have Xbox 360 stuff. The Xbox 360 has such a strange, sad story in Japan. I will truncate it substantially. After the original Xbox really didn't work there, Microsoft really tried again. And you know that original like white hourglass design of the Xbox 360? That was actually a Japanese engineer who came up with that. Microsoft wanted to appeal to Japan. They desperately wanted to win Japan no matter what it took. That was their mentality going into it in 2005. And so they were like, do whatever you got to do. We don't understand the Japanese market. We clearly don't get it, so we're just going to let you guys handle it. And for like 4 or 5 years, they just let Microsoft Japan do that. So in that result, they were like, we don't really care about all the Call of Duties and Maddens and that kind of thing. What we care about is, you know, the shoot 'em ups and the date sims and, you know, all that stuff you more stereotypically associate with Japanese audiences, more fighting games, RPGs, that kind of thing. And then the story goes that around 2009, 2010, supposedly it was Don Matrick. It would perfectly line up with the time he got there. Came over, took over the Xbox division, and requested an update from how Japan was doing with the Xbox 360. And they basically sent him a presentation of like, here's everything we're doing. Because it was actually doing well. That's the thing. The Xbox 360 was actually doing really well in Japan. A lot of people bought it. They considered it the quote-unquote otaku system, the spiritual successor to the Sega Saturn in a lot of ways, is how people felt about it. Because it had so much of these great shoot-'em-ups and visual novels and things that they had liked that they couldn't find on other platforms where Xbox was welcoming them and they were actually on board with it. It wasn't crazy popular, like as far as financially, but it had its base, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. So Microsoft of North America gets a wind of this and is like, this has our name on it? This is embarrassing. You can't have little anime girls running around and it says Microsoft on it? No, none of that. Dame, no want, which means no. By the way, Xbox literally translates to no box. Dame, don't want box. Like, that's how bad they didn't understand that market. Anywho, so they went in and said, no, you don't want any of that. No more of the date sims, no more of the shoot 'em ups, none of that. That's all got to go. What you want is Madden and Call of Duty. That's what you want. We know the Japanese. That's what they want. They're famous for loving hand egg, obviously. It's a sport only played in one country, and that isn't it. But obviously, that's what they want. So naturally, as soon as that happened, Japanese sales tanked, and the brand has never recovered and never will. But that said, it did result in a lot of really cool Japanese exclusive games for the 360, and we're going to go over some of them. I didn't get any of the visual novel stuff. I'm not trying to get any sort of full set. For the 360, I only get the Japanese exclusives I could actually like play and get some enjoyment out of. This one, I don't remember the name of it, but I'll put it on the bottom of the screen. It is a fighting game. It took us quite some time to figure out what this game was actually called, but once we did, it actually looked it up. It looked like it was a pretty cool fighting game. I played it for a little while. It was actually pretty fun. So I don't know how many people have ever heard of this one, but that one was pretty neat. This one is a shoot 'em up called Senko no Rande Duo. We actually got the first game in North America, but the sequel only came out in Japan, at least on the 360. So yeah, this one was pretty fun as well. Also very cheap. This is surprising to me that this was exclusive, and it also got my attention for another reason. This was actually, I don't know if it was a launch title, but I think it was launch window. This is Tetris, the Grandmaster Ace, which only came out in Japan. And it has a picture of Red Square in Moscow on it. And I'm like, that's kind of interesting. I mean, I know obviously Tetris is a Russian game originally. I know all that. But like, I'm like, yeah, they would not do that now. So that one was crazy cheap. This was like, Dame, get this out of our store. Don't want. That was like 500 yen. That was like $3. That was just no. Every time I saw this was like, oh no, we don't want that in our store anymore. But anyway, so there was a Oni-chanbara game for the 360 that was exclusive there. Oni-chanbara or Une-chanbara Z Kagura. So that I played it for just like a couple of minutes. It was kind of entertaining. And then we got Otamades Gorgeous. Is it Otamadius Gorgeous? There is an Otamadius game that we got. This isn't it. Funny enough, this is the cheaper of the two, even though this is the exclusive one. Don't ask me why, but yeah, we got that. It's shoot 'em up. And then there's another shoot 'em up called Caladrius. This is another one of these situations where The collector's edition, where it's just the game plus like a book and an outer sleeve, was like substantially cheaper than just the game by itself. The Japanese value the space more than the content sometimes, so that's a perfect example of that. So I was like, I will save like $10 or whatever it was to basically get the slightly bigger version. That's fine. So that was 360 stuff. Now, moving on to some oddball consoles. First up, for the Bandai Playdia. Some SD Gundam game. So Playdia games, it used to be my mentality. I have a Bandai Playdia. I've done a video on it. It is a piece of junk for children. It's like, it's not something an adult can really play. It's not even really a game console. Like, it is and it isn't. You can essentially think of it as like a VCR for children that use VCDs. It uses discs that are just videos. And the only interactivity is really the ability to pause. And that's kind of about it. It's not... calling it a video game console is a stretch. The only thing that people really have, the only reason anybody's kind of interested in it is Bandai, who made it, made a lot of the games. They also made a lot of the shows at the time, like Dragon Ball Z. I know they owned the rights, and probably still do, to Gundam. So they were basically trying to market the system to people who already liked those shows, and they made like exclusive episodes of those shows for this machine. So a lot of the, like, I'm not going to say this is an example, but I know Dragon Ball Z, there's examples of that. But basically, like, there'll be episodes of this that only exist if you have the Bandai Playdia, and there's no other way to, it was never archived in any other way. You could only play it that way. Now, I personally don't care about that. I was just like, oh, cool, some content for the Playdia. I own a Playdia, let's have a little bit of a library for it. But on this trip, I kind of got to the point where I was like, I saw a few more, and they kept getting more expensive, and the condition was getting worse, and I was like, pass. So this was the only one I found where it was cheap, and I was like, yeah, it's fine, I'll do it once, it's fine. So we added one game to that library. We got a couple of Neo Geo CD games. Neo Geo CD is a system that I'm not going for a full set on, even though I'm most of the way there. Because the handful I don't have are really ludicrously expensive for the most part. There's very few left, if any left, that I don't have that are like within what I would call a reasonable price range. So I've kind of told myself the goal with the Neo Geo CD is just pick up anything you don't have within a budgetary means, and wherever the chips fall is where they lie, you know, as far as the amount of whatever collection you end up procuring out of that. Because some of the games on the Neo Geo CD are like in a different league of astronomically priced, so I probably will never get those. But I did pick up a couple that weren't like that. We have Master of Shiogi, which is basically like a mahjong type of game. You know, this one was nothing. This one was not cheap, but because of the yen collapse, was actually like, all right, I'll do that. Ninja Combat. This game was I want to say it was like 10,000 yen, which a couple of years ago, or even a year ago, would have been like $100. And it's like, that's a bit much for like a Neo Geo CD game, in my opinion. But because of the yen collapse, this was only like $65. So I was like, okay, it's not going to get better than that. So I went ahead and I picked it up. And then finally, one of my grails, sort of, as stupid as it sounds, there is one console out there that anytime I find a game for it, I just throw it in my basket, no matter what the game is, unless I already have it, because you quite simply never find games for it. Then I decide if I actually want it or not, but in every situation where I've ever done that, I have walked away with it, because it's only happened like twice. This is for the Apple Pippin, a game called Pease, P-E-A-S-E. It seems to be software more than an actual game, but this is actually Apple Pippin content. If you're like, Apple? You're a big Apple guy? No! I hate Apple products. The only two I even own is an Apple Pippin and like an iPod. That's it. Apple made a game console in the 5th generation. The last one of the 5th generation, the most powerful system of that generation, and none of you have ever really played it because there's not really much to play. It barely existed. And the only country where it came out where it had any like blip on the radar was Japan, where it sold about 10,000 units and had just a blip of software sales, and that's about it. It did technically come out in the US. I have seen the American version one once, and it came out in Europe, but was recalled almost immediately, like even faster than the US recall. So yeah, you don't really see them. The Japanese ones you could at least find if you were really devoted to it. That said, the games for it, I never see them. This now marks the 5th game I have for it. And that being said, like every time I've ever found a game, I just buy it, you know, and I never find them. So when I saw it, I was just thrilled. I just grabbed it. I was like, good. It was like, I don't know, it was 6,000 yen, something like that, which is probably like $45, not even, maybe like $40. Didn't even care. It's like, you're never going to get a better deal than that. Just, it's there. It exists. Whereas if you go on eBay and try to find Apple Pippin games, good luck to you. Like, it is a pain. So I was just thrilled to get anything. Okay, we have a couple more items. We've got 3 specifically. One's off camera. First, the one I'm very excited about this one because this was on my list for a very long time, and I didn't think it was going to happen, but it did. For the Nintendo 64. My N64 goal is, I kind of want to get a full set, but I haven't really committed to it. I got every European exclusive, and I have all the Japanese exclusives except for 2. Oh, wait. Except for 1. Yes, I got one of those too, and I was very happy to do that. The North American stuff, as always, I'm missing a ton of. But the Japanese stuff, I'm only shy 1 game now. And this one I have seen several times, but it was always like $300 in the box, or if I found the loose card of it, which I only found like one other time, it was like $200, and I was just like, I'm not willing to pay that. This trip, though, I found the loose card. I found the loose card for 10,000 yen, which used to be about $100, which, to be fair, I probably would have been stupid enough to do. But with the exchange rate, as I just mentioned on Ninja Combat, was only $65. There was no hesitation. Mitemo desu ka? I need that. Kore kudasai. Kore ni shimasu. Need this one. I got Bangayo for the Nintendo 64. Hilarious part about this, it's a game by Treasure. I think it's the only game Treasure made for the N64, although I could definitely be wrong about... No, didn't they make... I can't remember the name of that game now. No, there was another game by Treasure. There's another game by Treasure. Japanese exclusive. Good game. I just can't remember the name off the top of my head. But anyway, so they made this. This is also available on the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast version is far superior. But I think it's one of the handful of actual like shoot 'em ups on the system, which is probably part of its value. It's exclusive to Japan, obviously. It's a very good game. And like I said, I had seen it multiple times over the years, but just never within the price range that I was willing to pay for it, especially because usually this game, for whatever reason, is boxed. It's very rarely loose cards. I don't pretend to know why that is, but yeah. So now I'm only missing 1, and sadly, I will probably never find it. But if I do, believe me when I tell you, I'm going to have a long story about the time I did find it and passed on it and how much I regret that. But that tale is for another time, assuming we ever tell it. Now, moving on, because that makes me happy. We have this bundle package here I haven't even really opened. I kind of figured it'd be kind of fun to do that together before we move on to the final item. Sorry about that. I originally wanted to open that whole thing on camera. I thought it would be more exciting, but then it was just too tedious to take it apart. So what it is, as you can see, the Sega Game Gear like micro set. This is like the collector's edition they did for the Go Sega campaign that comes with this cool case. And the whole idea is that you take the 4 of them you've got and you put them in there. And the case came with an exclusive transparent one. That's how you know you have the official set. So it makes for a really good display. I'll be honest, I am not going to play those in that form. Like they're super tiny little screens. They're not really good for an adult. They were actually designed mostly for children. So as a display piece, this is perfect. So I'll eventually like get this all set up. It's even got like frame, wire areas back there, so you can like post it on a wall or something. So yeah, eventually I'm gonna move it into that because that's really cool. I was looking online. This thing, it's not so much that they ask for like $500. I've seen these actually sell for like $500 US for this set. So I think that was probably one of my more financially responsible, but yet still stupid and irresponsible pickups. But something, I think that was cool, but something that was irresponsible, and I did it anyway, is I did pick up a game console. I did. I picked up one. Just one from Surugaya. I'm looking right at it. Oh, and she's a beaut. I picked it up because I was like, it was actually hilarious. I was looking at it like, do I have that or not? Which is never a good sign. And I was checking my records to see, like, do I have this? And I couldn't remember. To the point where I was like, I actually had to go into my Discord and ask some members and be like, do I have this? And everybody confirmed that I did not. Well, not everybody. A couple people confirmed I didn't. But here we go. well, not for the Sega Saturn, it is a Sega Saturn, the Hitachi High Saturn Model 1 with an extra controller. This is going to get its own rare variants video at some point. All I'm going to say on this is Hitachi made 3 versions of the Sega Saturn. All of them referred to as the High Saturn. They have their own custom boot logo and all that. It says Hitachi everywhere. It really doesn't mention Sega on it. It is ultimately a Sega Saturn, but there's 3. They use the molding of this one. This is the what's called the oval button model, or Model 1. There's a Model 2 with the round button. That one I have, and I was like, do I have that or not? I literally couldn't remember which of the 2 I had. And then there's the 3rd one with the GPS that only Hitachi made. I have that one as well. So now I have all 3, so that's going to make some good rare variants content at some point. I was just kind of shocked to see it. This was at like the last Surugaya I went to, and it was just there wrapped up, and I think they were only asking like 10,000. No, sorry. That one was also like 15,000 yen, so that was about $100. And I was like, yeah, that would be stupid to pass on that. I've already tested it out. It works perfectly. No issues of any kind. It's in great condition. Very happy about it. The only complaint I have is that when I came back from Japan and I opened up my suitcases and everything, TSA had taken this out at some point. They took the plastic wrap off of it and then rewrapped it in their stupid like TSA tape. Why? Why do that? Why? I'm just glad this time they didn't steal the controller like they did for my Resident Evil Claire Dreamcast that I once had the controller for that they took and never put back in. I don't think they actually stole it. I think it was just incompetence. But either way, this one that didn't happen, I still have the controller, so it's nice. So yeah, that was a big pickup there. So that is my Surugaya Specialty Shop pickups from Japan in July of 2024. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you missed the adventure video of what those stores look like, please check it out, as well as the other pickups videos from Hard Off, the adventure video and Hard Off, other pickups videos, and of course we have way more normal videos coming up. You know, I'll review stuff. Eventually we'll have a rare variants on all the Hitachi stuff because that's just really cool. But yeah, that for now will do it. Thank you guys as always for watching. If you guys do me a favor, please like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you've never done that before, as well as check out all the social media stuff in the description: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, Spreadshirt, Travel Channel. I appreciate the support so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later.